my name's Stuart Candy. I'm a professional futurist and a professor of foresight at OCAD University in Toronto, Canada.
So tell us about your ink experience.
Well, I mean, it's day one, so it's just beginning, but this is actually my first visit to India, and I'm privileged to be part of such a fascinating event.
Okay. So generally when they talk about telling the future in India, they mean astrology or palmistry or something like that. So can you bust a few myths about what you do?
Well, yeah, so I think that's strangely not just India. I think there is a tendency everywhere I've traveled for people to think about the future as being something that unfolds in a linear way, and therefore the challenge is simply to predict what that future is going to be, and then try to take advantage of it or avoid being steamrolled by it or something. The point of departure of the field of futures studies or foresight, which I work in and help other people with, is a different point of departure. It says that the future is not a single thing. In fact, it's always open. It's always an array of possibilities. And if you take that as the point of departure, then the question becomes not how do we predict the future, but how can we map and navigate alternative futures. And then it's about steering towards preferred outcomes and away from ones that you want to avoid.
Okay.
And that's a very different question from what is the future going to be.
Okay. So one of the most interesting points that I found was democratizing the tools of foresight.
Right.
So please tell us how you plan to do it, and how will an individual benefit from that?
Sure. So yeah, in my talk today I spoke about democratizing the tools of foresight because it's my belief that in order to navigate the challenges of the 21st century, the capacity to think well about the future needs to be distributed. It needs to be something that everyone, to some extent, engages in. That doesn't mean everybody needs to be a professional futurist or, to sort of spend all their time thinking about the future, but it does suggest that there's a certain baseline that we would do well to have as a common language, a common literacy, if you like, in society, so that we have a reflex and a habit of asking more and better questions about the future. So, for instance, during an election, a political election, you often have candidates making bold sort of sounding proclamations and basically posing in certain ways in relation to the future, but not ever being particularly concrete about what they expect or what they intend to make happen. And I think if the population at large, I'm not just speaking about this country, I'm more speaking about the places I've lived in other parts of the world, but I think it's true everywhere I'm aware of, that if there were a more futures literate population, we could have a much higher quality level of conversation about how, let's say, a policy might unfold and impact the desired outcomes.
Okay. So I'm from BlogAdda. I work with the blogging community. So can you tell me what are the futures of the digital medium as
Okay.
such?
So instead of giving you a prediction, I'm going to give you a suggestion, which is to take that question and play it using the game The Thing from the Future, which we just launched into Creative Commons today. So if you go to tinyurl.com/printfuturething, tinyurl.com/printfuturething, you will find your way to a free PDF of the game that we designed a year and a half ago at the Situation Lab. And if you you could use as the terrain in that game, this will make sense when you download it. The terrain in that game could be publishing or could be blogging, and then you could revolve the other variables around that and play a few rounds and actually see what kinds of possibility begin to emerge. You could also use blog as the object.
Okay.
In the object category, give that a try, and then play a few rounds. Use it, and I would love to know what you come up with. It'll be much more interesting than what I just tell you off the bat right now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.